Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Dr. Claudia Albers, Planet X research and professional physicist. And today I'd like to bring to you another one of my articles. This one is entitled, "The Sun is Now a Dark Star." Now, observation of Planet X system stellar cores, which are dead stars or energy-depleted stars, has led to the understanding that planets and stars are not that different. They both have dense cores which generate energy through decay of unstable nuclei. The larger the object, the denser will be the core, and thus the heavier will be the unstable nuclei in the core, so that the object is able to generate more energy. But all objects form with a certain amount of unstable nuclei, and once this energy is gone, they die or become stellar cores. You may look at article 240 entitled Planet X System Effect on Radioactive Decay Rate and Heating of Planets. And here are some of these objects. Planet X System stellar core or a comet. They come in as comets, so they are comets. And in the sun's corona, you can see it's drawing corona towards itself. You can see it attaching to the surface of the object on at various points. And you can see this one drawing material from the sun's chromosphere through a gravitational vortex connection. Stellar core's gravitational influence is dependent on the photon or gravitational energy in the particles making up this object. So when the energy is low, the objects lose gravitational influence. This causes them to share their outer layers of material, which then becomes a cloud of debris around the core of the object, hence the name stellar core. And you may look at article 184 entitled Stellar Core Evolution and article 435 entitled Planet X Debris Filling the Solar System. Sun is now a dark star. And here you see one of the objects coming in towards the sun. You can see the large amount of debris that surrounds this object, and it turned out to be larger than the sun. You can see that these pieces are huge, that we can see here underneath, but they are in front of the object. You can see this is in front of the object. And you may look at article 424 and article 425 for more details on this. This photon energy that powers these stars is lost through the lifetime of a star, as it emits light and has particle creation events, which means that it turns light into particles in order to generate the stellar wind. But it also turns mass into photons when it has a radioactive decay event or fission. So both things are going on inside the star. And you may look at article 185 entitled Stellar Formation, Stars are Formed from Light. This is possible because one part of the gravitational interactions causes electrons to be repelled by protons, so that electrons move to the outer layers of the star, and this leaves behind a positively charged interior and creates an outer negatively charged layer. And this is illustrated here. The star has a positive interior, it has a positively charged core, and it has a negatively charged outer layer. And this is the same as you have on the microscopic scale. This is how atoms are. Atoms have positive nuclei because they have protons in the nucleus, and they have electrons in the outer layer. And this is what makes chemical reactions possible and what makes life possible. So it is this part of the gravitational interaction that actually makes life possible in the universe. So, but then the fact that you have a positively charged interior and a negatively charged exterior means that an electric field is set up that is from the positive to the negative. That is the direction of the electric field. In other words, there's an electric potential. Well, there is a gravitational potential as well, and the gravitational potential then gives rise to the electric potential that then is across the atmosphere of the star and pushes it into plasma arc mode. It ionizes it, places it into plasma arc mode, and that leads to huge amounts of light being emitted. Thus, the electric field generated by gravity accelerates electrons, which collide with other electrons and get them to leave atoms, and then they are accelerated further. The atoms, because they now have less electrons, become ions. But when electrons are recaptured by atoms, they emit the excess energy as photons. And this is where the light emission comes from. Some of these photons will split into particles, i.e. protons and electrons, which then go into creating the solar wind and thus populating the sun's nebula clouds, which are supposed to look like this. You're supposed to have a positively charged nebula cloud made out of positive ions, and then after that an electron cloud, and all of them are supposed to be like that. We know from the Earth's Van Allen belts that that's the normal structure. But the comets or the stellar cores have been coming in for thousands of years, and they have been withdrawing ions and electrons. And they have depleted the electrons because that's what they are most depleted in. They come in as positively charged objects, and they are most depleted in electrons. So they have over time depleted all the sun's electron clouds to the point that they then started drawing electrons from the sun's corona itself, the last of the sun's negative layer. And this must be where things were in the 1980s when James McKinney started studying this and saw that there were only positive ions in the nebula clouds. The stars have two basic fuels which allow them to operate: unstable nuclei, which when they fission release gamma radiation or high energy photons, and electrons in their outer layers. Since the creation of electrons requires a high electric potential in the outer layers than what is required for light emission, it is likely that stars will run out of electrons long before they run out of gravitational energy. This is why stellar cores seem to have no outer negative layers and operate as superions, whilst living celestial objects operate as neutral atoms with a positive core and a negative outer layer. So this is what a stellar core would look like. It has a positive interior. It has no negative outer layer, whilst the sun still had a few years ago. I believe it has now become so totally depleted that it is no longer able to emit light because there's no negative outer layer, so there's no electric potential across its atmosphere, and it requires that in order to emit light. It also requires that in order to create a solar wind. So the sun is most likely not producing any solar wind either. Furthermore, because the sun is no longer a good supply of electrons, the stellar cores will be drawn to other solar system objects that still have plenty, which will bring them to Earth. This is most likely why we are getting more and more incidences of large amounts of dust entering the atmosphere and the disrupting of the sky simulation, so that the light emitted by the stellar cores captured atmosphere illuminates the atmosphere, the Earth's atmosphere, in bright single frequency colors. This increase in incidence points to the Earth being at the edge of cataclysmic events, which these objects will no doubt cause. And here is what occurred in, well, photographs from the event that occurred in Russia in July of this year. And the sky went dark and stayed dark for about 3 hours, and it was illuminated in this color, this red color. And this meant that the sun simulation system failed in the atmosphere, so the sky went dark because of course there was no real sun to replace it. But the stellar core that had approached the Earth at that time, and it was the dust from its debris field that must have entered the atmosphere and interrupted the light, the artificial lighting system, must have been emitting this color of light. So the atmosphere in this region was illuminated with that color only. And you may look at Article 451 entitled "The Sun is no longer shining, the Russian event and sudden cold." So in conclusion, the Planet X system stellar cores have managed to deplete the Sun in one of the two primary fuels stars use to operate, electrons. So although not yet a stellar core brown dwarf, the Sun is now a dark star, as it can no longer emit light. The objects are also coming to the Earth in increasing numbers because the Sun is no longer able to keep them supplied with electrons. And these are the references. This is Dr. Claudia Albers, Planet X physicist. Thank you for watching.